You are in it. We are here. And you already know what time it is. This is the signature pour where we talk about what's important that you pour into your life so that way you can get the best things out of it. So, this is the shift in perspective. And with that, we talk about the real importance of what's necessary in life, the real setup of how you can design that life, and the energy that it takes to implement all of the things that's necessary to design that life. Because it's what we do. That's lo que hago, that's lo que hacemos. So I am your boy, Jocquill. Je n'appelle pas français. C'est tout en belle vie. Bonjour, mon ami. To where that we talk about the real setup of how it's done. And I know we haven't been going live as often as I want it to be. However, that still doesn't stop us from getting the message out there. That still doesn't stop us from still increasing more of that value that we need in our everyday, that sets up our everyday success for our everyday structure. And it just goes hand in hand. So, with that being said, this is a really cool topic today because it's a topic that I even have to implement more in my everyday. Because throughout the setup and the designs, we want things to just happen. Like we want them to be right there. We want that setup. We want that design to come forth, come forward, and just for us to have it, right? But then sometimes we forget that the same thing that we've been wanting and working for has already have been developed. It's just that we keep looking over the fact of like, oh man, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, that it gets to a point that we forget that what we asked for has already been given to us tenfold. So this is where we slow down for a moment. We take the time to actually design a new setup that allows us to know that, all right, even if it's not how we pictured it to be, it can still be something that allows me to appreciate it where it is. So that way, as the process continues, then it still comes to me in all of the more ways than one. So that's why today's lesson is patience, not panic. Because at the end of the day, it takes a certain level of understanding that you're waiting for something to happen and you're creating that something to happen. It's something that I've been really adjusting myself to in my everyday today, because separating the difference between you needing something to happen and you're creating that something that's going to happen, two totally different concepts and thought processes. This one, it states that it's coming from a place of lack, that you don't have it yet, and what you need out of it is going to finish or complete what you are or what you're going for. And then that's the misconception, because on the other side, if you're in the mode of, all right, I'm just gonna add more to it, I'm just gonna do a little bit more. All right, I did it yesterday, I did it, and been doing it for the last month, last year, last 30 years, however long you've been going at it, to where that you don't mind still creating it, to where once it's done in the way that you accept it to be, because remember, it's all internal, not external, that it allows you to understand that you can build more without needing more. And look, I gotta tell you, this is something that's been hitting me in my everyday life more than everything else. It's been a real lessons in the slowing down, letting it flow. And before, we got into this topic, I would consider myself to be a pretty patient person. I thought that to be the case. But then throughout different levels of upgrades or different designs or different concepts, you start to realize that somewhere there's a moment in knowing that, oh, this is another level of that same patience. Like I say, don't let me sit here and think that it's just sweet. No, 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 no. Some of the lessons that's been hitting me is the fact that, I want to be able to design a company, right? I will build, I will work, I will set it up. And it's until you get to a point of setting it up that you go, man, this is a lot to do. And then your instant thought is like, why am I even doing this in the first place? I don't need to do this. But it's through those moments that allows that building. Then you have to take that time. Like, life is designed as this fantastic set of events that just happen. They life it you do something, life happens. You don't do nothing, life happens anyway. It's these sets of events that allows you to understand that when you do something, there's the equal and opposite reaction to what happens. So you doing something and implementing what you're doing is only due to the fact of what gets done, right? It's just so interesting because then now you realize that you've done something and you want this next thing to happen. So you sit back and you wait for it. But through those certain moments of events, they line up to different moments, the moment you want it, and they all work in a certain way of compound of patience because nothing ever just happens automatically. You don't just do a workout and you automatically get stronger. You don't just read one book and you automatically become smarter. Yes, you pick up on more skills, you pick up more lessons that you can follow, but then you still not to that point that you want to reach yet. And that's the point of the patience and not panic, because the patience is understanding that, man, I've been doing this for a long time and I have not seen no real results that I want to see, because the results that you want to see versus the results that are actually happening are two different things. You are able to have things happen that further progress your life, but if they're not things that you're noticing and things that you're paying attention to that allow you to understand that you're growing, then you will forever be in a state of, oh, it's not happening, nothing happens, and then you'll give up and then you'll quit. When at the end of the day, it wasn't the fact that nothing was happening, it was the fact that you weren't seeing it in the way that you thought. And that's why it's always important to have that perspective. Because if you can shift perspective from going, I'm working towards something versus nothing's happening, then you understand where you are in the project or in the setup of the design. Is and we get so flustered. We wake up and we go to work, we do the thing, we go to sleep. Then we wake up, we go to work, we do the thing, we go to sleep. We wake up, we go to work, we do this thing, we go to sleep. And we do that. And over the course of months or over the course of years, we feel that there's no real progression because it's what we're seeing. It's not what actually is happening, because you have to remember that the brain is perceived by what you think things are, not by how they are. Like there's this wonderful experiment that they had a makeup artist come in and they had the makeup artist make a scar or some kind of disfigurement on a bunch of students' face. This was in Stanford, if I'm not mistaken. I could have that wrong. I'll double check that. But they had this experiment where they had a bunch of students, they had a makeup artist come and they had them do like a scar or a disfigurement on their face and whatnot. And then they had the students see what it looked like. And then before they went out, they told the students that they were going to have a little touch up on the thing so it could last longer. And when they finished, they sent all the students out, and the goal was to have interactions with people and then come back and then see how those interactions went. And everyone came back and was saying that people were just like looking at them weird. They were like, they just was a little intimidated. They didn't feel comfortable with talking to people because they understand that they were, because they looked weird, because they felt weird, right? So what they didn't tell the students was the fact that the makeup artist, when they did the touch up, they actually wiped off the scar, or they wiped off the disfigurement. So when they went out into public, they didn't really have the scar on their face, but they felt like they did. They knew they seen it. They were like, oh man, I got this scar on my face. I got to go talk to people. So now they're actually out in public and they're talking to people, and they don't have nothing on their face at all. However, they feel that they do. So it's causing them to feel a certain way. They're not talking to people as they would want to, or as they would regularly communicate. So the funny thing about that is that our brains only perceive what we think people are thinking. So that means if we're sitting back and we're saying, oh man, like, I'm not feeling too good about having to do this, or I gotta wait for this, or oh, I need this, or I'm just waiting, then our brains are gonna perceive that same kind of thought. And it's gonna send that signal to our bodies, letting us know that we feel uncomfortable. And then we start to tense up and we start to feel stress. Now we have anxiety. Now we need medication and all of these other things. And like, it's crazy because it only starts from that simple thought process of going, oh, I need it, or oh, this is what's happening, versus you actually sitting back with yourself and understanding that, okay, this is how I feel about what's going on. And versus me feeling some kind of way about what's going on, I want to focus more on what's actually becoming of me while this is going on. There's a really big difference in understanding. And I'm going to read a little chapter out of something for you all, so that way we can really dive into it. But it's to really emphasize on the fact that sitting back and understanding that you are doing something versus sitting back and nothing happening are completely different. They work in different states of mind, right? And it's always important when it comes to that perspective of how. Now, look, don't let me lecture you all on this, because like I feel like I got a little too technical into it. But the whole concept of it is to really pay attention to what's actually being done, and then how it's actually increasing in value. There's really big differences on the states of perspective that go along with it. Like, and that's why the patience is so important, because throughout the workout, you just do the workout, right? You don't expect to get muscles or a six pack or huge arms after 2 weeks of doing that workout. Now, there are steps that allow you to see differences. You start to wake up a little bit more lighter. That crook, or that way that you moved, it feels a little bit different because there's certain muscles that's been stretching. But that's the important part of understanding the patience of that process. And through that patience is really cool, because through the understanding of the process of the progress of the progression, process of the process, progress of the process, it can allow you to understand that you're moving through it, right? There are these steps that you take. There are these moments that make you feel a little bit uneasy about it, but then you take that unease. You go into a situation, you go, man, this is really uncomfortable. I am not enjoying this whatsoever. You take that thought process and understand, why do I feel so uncomfortable in this moment? Why am I? And then you take that level of patience, that level of understanding to just tranquilo, hermano, tranquilo, amiga, to where that you understand that, oh, wait a minute, this is actually helping me more with blank. It always happens in our life. In life, I guarantee you that in life, there's a moment that you go, man, I want to kind of be like that. Or, I wish I had the kind of setup that's what you say, like, right? You'll have that thought and you're thinking to yourself, like, man, I wish I was a little more confident. Man, I wish I was a little bit more ambitious. And then that's just a thought. Like, that's one of just the passing thoughts. Like, you just think, "Ooh." And then once you sit back, a moment comes in life to where now it tests that thing. It tests that thought. Now, it could happen the next few minutes after, it could happen a week later, it can happen a couple of years later. However, that lesson will show itself, not because of the fact that life is happening to you, it's something that you asked for. It's something that you were in the design of. It's just like when people ask for patience, right? If someone asks for patience and then they end up getting stuck in a traffic jam or an accident and then they get upset, then they're not paying attention to what they've been asking for. Like, we think that when we ask for something, it comes in the form that we ask. Like, I want it to be X, Y, Z. And we think that because we ask for it like that, that's what it actually will come out to. No, no, no. It comes out in the lesson that's necessary for you to receive it. And then a lot of times that lesson presents itself so strongly out of nowhere, remember, because sometimes it happens a little bit later, sometimes it happens immediately. That lesson happens out of nowhere. Now you get caught in a sense of, oh man, like, what's going on? Or, oh man, what's happening? It's the thing that you asked for. It's just not coming to you in the way that you thought it would. Now, you pray for the rain, you have to deal with the mud too. Like, you can't just pray for the rain and then not put on your boots. Like, that's, you got it. It's someone you got to know. And it's something that I've been more recently experiencing myself. I was discussing this with my mom, and I was saying that I'm not actively in the gym, like training 4-5 days a week, multiple hours a day. Like, I work full time, whatnot, and I know that there's some tournaments or some competitions that are coming up in the next few months after summer and whatnot. So I want to be physically and conditionally ready to go round for round, 3 to 5 minutes at a time. And like I say, I'm not in the gym like training to where that I'm in there 4 or 5 hours a day, to where that I'm doing that same kind of conditioning for a fight. So I'm like, man, like, I need ways to still be able to condition cardio and strength training regularly. So then now on my route, I tell you, I'm a delivery driver for Amazon. On my routes now, I get the routes where, if you all have been with me and I explain like a multi-stop, like where it's one stop, but you go to multiple locations in that one stop and it counts as one stop. You go to these apartment buildings and you got 306 on one side and 302 on the other side. Not only is that one stop, but I have to go up the stairs on both sides of the buildings. And that could be an envelope, that could be some box, that could be a desk. Yes, no, I mean a literal desk. Like, that I end up taking up 3 floors. Cat litter is not nothing to play with. Cat litter, if you've ever picked up a box of cat litter or a bag of dog food, and I'm talking about for the big dogs, you'd understand that it's not the fact that they're heavy, it's the fact that the equilibrium of the bags or the boxes are off. So it kind of makes it difficult to carry, plus 3 flights. Anyway, I want to be able to do some conditioning and some strengthening, and bada bing, I take up this desk to the 3rd floor and come back down and take up this envelope to the 3rd floor on the other side of the building, all while carrying whatever the object is, skipping the steps and whatnot. So now I'm getting that strengthening and conditioning on top of like real life scenario of, me carrying the boxes up the stairs and me going at a certain level of strength of carrying them, or at a certain pace of skipping the stairs and whatnot. So now there was a point in where I realized it. Like, mind you, I just came from an apartment complex that, I was up and down the stairs every stop. Like, I literally, like, every stop in the apartment complex, I was always going to the third floor. So there was already an apartment complex that I was already coming from doing this. So then I go to the next one, and it's the same setup. It's like I go to the third floor every stop. So I'm over here like, before I can get anywhere near into that thought process of like why, like, I already think like, man, I'm really getting a workout with this. And I go, bing, oh snap. This is what I was asking for. I was asking for a way to be able to become a lot more conditioned, do a lot more working out, even though I'm not doing the normal training in the gym. I can still get cardio and I can still strength train. And through that, I had to realize it really quick before I went into the aspect of like, oh, why do I have to be the one on this route that takes all these boxes? No, because it's what you wanted. Right? So it takes that understanding, right? If I were to be one that was just completely upset about the route and just complaining the whole time that I gotta take the boxes all the way to the third floor, I gotta keep doing it, I gotta do this every day, then I would only just be more into that thought process of not becoming better. I would only just be stuck, especially after I've already discussed that, like, hey, I want, like, there are some fights and there are some tournaments coming up after the summer that I want to participate in. So if I'm not working out in the gym, then I need to still be working out like solidly and not just like, oh, like a couple push-ups and like little sit-ups. No. I mean, like, you gotta actually like build muscle on top of everyday activities or build muscle solidly for certain times of day. And it takes that patience of understanding that, all right, where do I want to implement to that? Because if I'm someone who works all the time and feel that I don't have enough time, which is not true, I say that sarcastically, but if I'm someone that feel like I works all the time and feel like someone that I don't have enough time to work out, then there has to be some way I can implement a workout into the job. So now, instead of just trying to like, drag boxes or drag bags, I'm actually like lifting them. Like at the end of most of the shifts, right? When you're done, like, you have about 12 to 15 totes that have all of the packages in each one of them throughout the day of your route, right? So afterwards, you take all of the bags back to the warehouse. And when you take these bags back to the warehouse, you see people, everybody, like however they threw the bags in there or whatnot, they dragging the bags to the warehouse. Like, they pull the bags out the van and then they drag them. And then, most times they have two bags because, it takes, if you put all the bags in one bag, it makes it super heavier to drag. So they split the bags, right? So they pull them. And at the end of every shift, I decide that, me just based off of organization and, neatness anyway in the van, I always put every bag in one bag. And I was trained, they said that, like you can fit about like 8 bags in one of them. In reality, you can fit all of the bags on your route into this one bag. So people always have 2 because it's too heavy. So instead of dragging one heavy bag, they decide to just drag 2 of them. Cool. I put everything in the one bag because I like the organization on the truck and I like to have like the space to walk around if need be. That once I'm done, I take all of the 12 to 15 bags and put them in one, and I carry the bag over my head and I take it into the warehouse. I don't drag it. Now, people see that and they go, damn, like, in reality, if I break it down to them, I let them know that they're still actually working out more than me. Even though I have one bag and I lift this bag over my head and carry it, you all are still doing a bigger workout than me because you all are still pulling 2 bags, working different muscles. So if you're someone who's carrying two and you're dragging them back, you're working your calves, you're working your thighs, you're working your lower back, you're working your shoulders. Like me carrying my one bag over my head, it takes me to have the stability and the strength from my legs to lift it over. But then after it's above my head, then it's all of my upper body. It's literally just my shoulders and core that's actually holding. So I tell people all the time, like, hey, you do realize that you're actually doing a bigger workout than me. Like you're actually working out more muscles regularly than I am. It just looks different because of the fact that I was actually able to get the bag over my head. Now, I say all that because through that organization throughout the day and then that patience at the end of the day, like I'm still in that mode of working out. Like I'm still in that mode of like, all right, cool. I probably had a lighter route today, so I probably didn't run up as many stairs, or I probably didn't run around as many buildings. So even at the end of the day, I still take this form of working out and getting it above my head. Now, if I can get the bag over my head and I can get it up there and I can hold it at a stable weight, then I can lift heavier things above my head. I can lift heavier people over my head for a hip toss, really just throw them, So there are still, even though I'm still not doing the same kind of workouts that somebody else would be doing as pulling the bag, there's still a different kind of training that goes along with it. You see what I'm saying? So through that training, I have to be patient enough to understand that, all right, cool, like being able to be physically fit enough to get this bag over my head requires a certain kind of balance, a certain kind of form, and a certain kind of conditioning to, shoulders and back that allows me to hold it at a certain rate, which can also lead into me into the tournaments. If I can just swing this bag, then I should probably be able to swing a person just as easy as well, So it really just comes down to the type of training. Now, to take it all the way back to the patience and not panic, that patient aspect is understanding that it takes the time for it to build. It takes that little moment for it to build into something that can allow you to see that value. The thing is, we get so caught in the thing that we're doing that we forget that something's actually happening. Remember, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So we get so caught in the action that we forget to see what's actually happening. We're so caught in the moment, we are so caught in the feeling that we forget that there was some kind of other design that was happening in the background. We were just so focused on one thing that we didn't see it another way. It happens all the time. It's one of the biggest things on why life can just pass by. Like you're so focused on the next thing that you forget about this thing in your present. And then this is why where the saying comes, when the saying comes, you never appreciate a moment until it's gone, is because now that let's break it down. You're here in the present moment with something already, but you're still focused on this future moment that hasn't come yet. Now this moment passes. Now you're on your way. You still haven't made it to that future moment yet, but you're still on your way, but you're still asking for so many things, forgetting what you had in that moment. But now you're to a point to where now you're like, oh man, I feel like deja vu, or like I feel like I've been here before, to where you kind of look back and think like, man, I did kind of have that. Oh, I wish I would have appreciated. That's where so we do this over the course of 70 years or however long the new average of lifespan of humans are. And then we get to a point to where we're like, oh, wait a minute. This has already happened to me before. I've actually experienced it, to where that now we can appreciate it. Now, to think if you don't have to wait that long. Think if you don't have to wait until you're 65, 55 years old to realize the lessons that have existed for centuries. These aren't new lessons. We are in a new age and a new time, which makes it awesome because now we can see it. But then through that new age and that new time, we have different distractions. Like, even though, look, I'm not saying I'm turning off the video now, but the distractions that we have when it comes to social media and phone, it stops us from focusing on what we're so caught in the scroll. We're so caught in the focus of this thing that we forget to pay attention to the other thing. That's why I'm here letting you know on this thing that is like, hey, look. If you're gonna be on here, make sure that you get the right things from it. Like, if you're gonna scroll information, and then don't only just scroll through that information, use that information. But then that's where it all happens, right? This new age of technology has us so caught up in the technology in itself that we're forgetting that what the technology can do for us. Now, there's never a time where I sit back and I think like, man, what is the capital of Japan? And think like, man, I don't know that. But then I don't sit back and not know that. I go look it up. Now I'm interested in Japan. Now I'm over here like, konnichiwa tomodachi, watashi wa nihongo hashimasu ka, to where that now I'm over here like, all right, cool. I actually like it. And I said, the capital of Japan. All right, don't test me on that right now. But that's the point. That's where we can't make an excuse for the fact of not knowing that, because now there's so much availability. There always has been, but now there's so much of it in such a faster moment that we forget. Now there's all of these other things going on in the world that we're so caught up in that we're forgetting that we're supposed to be using this device to do more. I can honestly tell you that I didn't know phones could do what they could do. I am only 29 years old. Like, so I'm not like, back in my days, we only had landlines. No. I was like born, I was around when the first phones were being created. And I still don't know. You can actually like, and I don't mean like sign documents on like regular stuff. You can like actually just make your signature to where you can post it on documents through like Adobe Reader and things like that. So where you can sign documents instantly. And I'm over here like, damn, like look how connected you can be to someone from so many miles away and then really do deals. So it makes you think. So now now I'm stuck in a mode of like, man, I thought a phone could actually only just like, send that kind of thought, send one conversation from here to around the world in seconds, when in reality, like, it can do the same kind of business in seconds. It can create the same kind of companies in seconds. Like, it's insane. And especially with the fact of how crypto is being designed into currency, forget about it. Like, so there are so many things that are going on. And yes, look how I just explained it. Look how many things are just going on in the world that are just happening that makes us think about, man, crypto is confusing, because there's so many elements of it that, you just get swept up in the flow of the outcome. And that's why it's just best to get smart. It's just best to have that kind of knowledge. It's best to do that kind of research, because then when you apply it regularly and then you allow it to become part of your everyday structure for success, then you start to realize like, oh, wait a minute, this is where it all comes back. It all comes back to inconveniences, and people exist everywhere. So you're your normal self in a world filled with so much noise. And it's easy to get lost in that noise, because the noise isn't always destructive, right? This is where we get lost. Like, the noise isn't always just you going, oh man, something's happening in my life, or oh man, that person's irritating. No, sometimes the noise can be like your favorite show. Sometimes the noise can be that one thing that you say, oh, it's fine. I do this normally. Sometimes the noise can be just you, the actual procrastination of a design. You're so successful at where you are that noise is stopping you from continuing on to where you can be. Like, so the noise isn't always destructive or disruptive. It's actually sometimes a part of your everyday. And something that I've learned in mine is the fact that like I enjoy my shows, like Trust and Believe. Like I listen, let me get catch up. Like so, I'm a big binger myself. Like I have to find myself out of a moment of not putting so many hours before what's actually necessary. If I can spend a few hours watching a good show, then I can spend a few hours designing a new project. I can spend a few hours researching on how to scale a company. Like, so it's not the fact that what you do is wrong, it's about the fact of how much of what you're doing is the setup of it, right? It matters how much is being implemented. If your energy is going more into negativity than positivity, and you want to figure out how to tip those scales to where that you can put more energy into the pot. That's why you start to see this calm, right? That's where the real patience kind of starts to come in. You start to see this calm of knowing that like you've ever been in a you ever let me say that you've ever been in a moment where every time like you show up and something happens and you show up and something happens and you show up and this happens and you show up and this happens and you know you got to come here often. It could be school, it could be work, it could be like grandma's house, right? But every time you show up, the moment is still the same, and then that same moment that shows up makes you feel uncomfortable. That same moment makes you feel unable to do more than what you think. You just show up to that moment and it happens. So then you do something different. You decide not to care, right? You get to a certain point to where that you just really can't put that same kind of energy into it no more. So then you don't do it. You show up to that moment the next time and then you don't put the same energy into it. And then what do you know? It changes. However, it's still the same place. It's still the same moment. So that means it doesn't happen because the moment changed. It mattered because you changed. Because you decided to go, I'm not doing this. And then you didn't do it. And then it came out to be a lot better than if you were to just show up in that same moment with the same perspective. Now, that's the tough part because then a lot of times you hear those stories. Oh, I worked for 25 years. I worked for 30 years. And, I finally decided to take that leap, right? Doesn't take that long. Doesn't take that long. I can't speak on how hard it was to find a job or build income like back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I can't speak on it. I know right now in the 20th century that it's easier than ever to make money, right? Making money isn't the hard part. Building something that can produce money is what is considered to be the more difficult part. So to take it back to that level of patience that's necessary to build, to structure, for it to crumble, for you to rebuild, for you to restructure, and for that process to go on over and over again is the same as any workout to get stronger. And like I say, this is really something that I've been paying attention to in my everyday life because, there's certain times where like you're experiencing something and there's certain times where it's your experience, right? Like, like you can have some relatability to a certain situation and you can go, oh man, like I know what that feels like. But then you can also be in a moment to where like you could be in that same situation with the person that's saying it and you can completely relate. And I say that because right now in my life, I've had to take the biggest step back. Like, I know I've probably said this a bunch of times, like before this moment, but I mean, I've really had to take a huge step back and take a look. See, now, if I was to be someone who I was when I was chasing after every opportunity and everything that I thought would help, then this would be a whole different conversation right now. Like, I'd probably be like head first into something that I have no business being there because there was no structure providing it. So when I mean I've had to take this really big step back, like, I have this really big goal of being able to acquire like these events at high ticketed prices that literally pays for every aspect of life necessary within months of, if not only a month, right? So that comes at the hustle, right? Finding events, making connections, talking to people, really understanding how the business works when it comes to setting up and design. And then once you realize, like, okay, well, that sounds easy enough. You talk to enough people, you make enough connections, you shake enough hands, you send out stuff, you build your social media to a certain point that it becomes easy for you to actually do. Okay, cool, that's easy. Okay, now that the fact that I made the connections and I built the relationships and I've actually built the social media brand, all right, now I bring the product. Now I create the product, I design the product, I build it, I structure it to where that it does this for the certain people, because you got to remember in sales that you're not selling an item, you're selling the experience of what it does for the person purchasing the item. So always remember that. So now you're building the thing that has this kind of value that given to someone will increase their value. So you build that, then you start to realize that there's some underlining that you need before you can even walk into a place and give that to someone else. So then you do it. So then you start to realize that now it's not just that one thing no more. It's this level of like things. And I say that in all honesty because that's something that I've just experienced firsthand myself. I started with just, an idea of I love bartending. Like I like designing the science behind crafted beers, the science behind the distill process of whiskeys and bourbons and rye, the way that grapes infuse, the way that you grow grapes in the summer, the way that you grow grapes in the winter. Like there's like the way that you design wines. Like all of this is very fascinating. So yes, I would very much like to participate in designing my own. Maybe I can come up with some stellar white wine that's just beyond awesome because the grapes that I use are from the mountains of where. So then now the thought process goes a little deeper to where it's like, all right, where do I get the grapes from and where are those mountains at? And how do I get to those mountains? And then how much is it going to cost me to get to those mountains? And what do I need to get to those mountains? And how much of that structuring do I build that can get me to those mountains to get to those grapes? Like, and don't let me waffle when I say that because like that's the idea. Like the idea is me just being a bartender that understands like, oh, this white wine is made in this Sauvignon Blanc is made in. I'm embarrassed now because like I'm a bartender. I should know this like automatically. Kim Crawford is made in also all good Sauvignon Blanc wine is made in New Zealand. That's like New Zealand. So like I was really losing it for a second. Well, like I know that all good white Sauvignon Blanc come from New Zealand. Like whatnot. So that I know, but how do they do it? How have they made the grapes? How have they built the product? How have they? Those are the things that when people create a dream or people go out of like go for their aspirations that they forget that it takes this level too. Like it's easy to be ambitious. To have the energy to go, whoa, let's do it, let's make it happen. Yeah, because that's the part that gets you running. That's the motivation that everybody can be. That's why you got to structure momentum over motivation. You can't allow that one feeling to think to carry you because there's going to be so many of these processes that happen. And if you don't have that level of patience and it's all just ambition, then you're going to miss the setup that go along with it. be someone that's actually going at it, doing it, and then have the struggle behind it, and wonder why, because you having that level of patience to go, all right, I do this. You do what you do to keep yourself in the same momentum necessary to continue on what's necessary. I know I probably just said necessary like 3 times. Like, you got it from your most unprofessional live streamer. We in it to